This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I think we're ready to go.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm John Burton, and I'm the chair of the South Burlington Economic Development Committee. And we are very appreciative that you showed up tonight to give us input on the City Plan 2024. This is the public meeting for that, and there are other public meetings we'll talk about. Thanks very much for attending. There in total will be 11 meetings for the public about a variety of issues, and it's all posted on the website to provide feedback for the future of the city. We really appreciate your feedback, but tonight we want to focus it on economic development. There's just so many other issues for the other meetings. So please try to stay on that topic. And if you can't have your full say, you can always submit written comments to the city in that way. So we'll start tonight with a short presentation from the city planning staff about the city planning process and a little bit of background. And after that, Joe will help facilitate and open up to broader conversation. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, John. Just one quick check. Can the folks online hear that okay, or could you hear that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah,
Should have thought. I didn't want to interrupt you,
Srini
but just
heard
double
it.
checking. Yeah.
Michael, can you hear us?
Srini,
Srini, can you hear us?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great, excellent.
We had a slight hiccup last week, so we're just making sure before we get too far into the meeting. So I am, now I gotta change which computer I'm using right now. My name is Kelsey Peterson. I'm the city planner here at the City of South Burlington. And I'm just going to show a PowerPoint with some foundational background information about our city plan. Okay, everybody can see the shared screen has come up for everyone. Great. Now it won't change slides. There we go. So what is City Plan 2024? If you're here, you probably have some sense of what we're doing here, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, City Plan 2024 is our big overarching umbrella policy statement. The city uses it to set a shared vision of the community's future and to use this for what the city wants to be striving for in the coming decades. It guides both the city council and city administration priorities. And it guides adoption of changes to the land development regulations and how our capital investments are planned and made. It also provides some support for grant funding applications. This is especially relevant for funding that we apply for from the state. Most, if not all, grant applications will ask, where in your municipal plan is this or that project supported? And so we need our comprehensive plan to be saying what we need it to say so that we can be successful on grant funding. There are both elements that are required by statute, so certain topics we have to include and discuss. And we also have to address that there are statewide planning goals that either need to be addressed, that we are being consistent with them, or more or less fully explained why what we're doing differs from those statewide goals. So why update it? So we last updated it in 2016. So that process was in 2014, 2015 or so. The plan is effective for 8 years and it expires in February 2024. So we do need to adopt a new plan fully finalized by then. If anyone is familiar with the city council schedule and city government schedule, February is not the best time to have a deadline for a large policy document. So working backwards a little bit, our goal is to have this plan finalized before the core of budget season. So most of December and January, the city council is dealing with the next budget. So what our goal is, sort of working backward from there, final adoption would be by December of 2023. I've told Jesse Thanksgiving, and I'm intending to stick to that. Which then puts public hearings at both the city council and before that at the planning commission in the sort of September to November timeframe. There's different warning requirements and things that's about how long it will take. Full draft review would be in between May and August of 2023. And then that, counting backwards, puts our initial input at February to May of 2023. It is February 2023, so here we are. So this initial input section includes both these public meetings, but also input from the committees. So we have various policy committees made up of volunteers, of residents. This meeting is hosted by the Economic Development Committee, but every committee is involved in one way or another. Also input from our staff departments. We have a significant professional staff in the city, so we're also getting input from them. This time frame also includes drafting of our sections, sort of piece by piece going through the comprehensive plan, and the beginning of review of those sections and objectives by the Planning Commission. Is there any questions about sort of the approximate timeline? These do sort of overlap and they are a little bit squishy. The intention is that by the end of August, a full draft will be moving into that public hearing session. So from now, we're working on initial input into these draft sections, sort of iterating through the Planning Commission, back to committees, back to staff, and kind of rotating through a couple times for the Planning Commission meetings over the summer to be more opportunity for the public or committees or whoever to be providing feedback on sort of the full document. So we also wanted to just talk about a few pieces of known information. There are some facts that we need to be planning our comprehensive plan, our city plan, our municipal plan. There's a lot of words for it around. These are things that are not easily changed. If you think of like a tanker ship, like it's hard to push it off and take a different course. So the first would be our population growth. It's pretty well established that the population growth in South Burlington will be somewhere around 1.5%. And the number of homes added per year has averaged about 150. Recently, we've seen an uptick in that just in the last couple of years. But those are two things that we anticipate continuing into the future.
How do you define a home?
A dwelling unit.
So it could be a rental.
Yes. Yep. Rental units, apartments, single family homes, those would all be a home.
Kelsey, is this presentation available for us to look at more closely?
It will be, yeah. It is not currently, but it will be.
Do you actually have a breakdown of what percentage are rental, what percentage are single home?
We don't. That's partially because, well, it's almost all because we actually don't have a rental registry in South Burlington. So it would be very difficult to know for sure exactly how many are rentals. We have some sense in the larger buildings, like we know like this whole building is property managed and rented, and this whole building is condos. But when it gets down to duplexes and single family homes, like we don't know.
What about like market value versus not market value dwelling? No, because that matters for our taxes. So
Sure.
I'm just curious.
Sure. I don't have that number in front of me, but that's a number that would be more accessible than the number of rentals.
Well, the state has listed us at 92% now, I think, of, the way they appraise and adjust it. So they've said we've gone from 100% last year when reappraisal occurred. We're already saying that housing has appreciated another 8 or 9% in a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the housing market recently has been a little bit crazy. Just a couple other pieces of information here. I just wanted to show that is the breakdown. I know it's very hard to see with tiny writing, but it's visually the breakdown of our housing mix. From the lighter gray is multifamily, the dark navy would be single family, and the lighter blue as duplex. But the housing mix of properties that have been constructed since 2000 The light gray is, again, multifamily. So much higher percentage of multifamily has been constructed since 2000. It is actually very recently in the last year or two that we have actually shifted from being majority single family homes to majority multifamily. Just some more information about population and housing. Our population is also diverse, it's growing, it's also diversifying, and it's also aging. So we're getting a more diverse population. We're getting an older population overall, and we're seeing some increase in number. We have about 11% of residents who speak a language other than English at home. So we have some diverse populations that historically South Burlington didn't have as much. Some more information or just land use knowns. About 51% of the city is either conserved public land or has regulatory restrictions, and about 41% is currently built. Since 2010 or so, 85% of new housing has been within the city's transit overlay district or immediately adjacent, which for us is a proxy for our sort of more developed, more built, more downtown is too narrow a word, but more established areas instead of building in greenfield areas. Some transportation knowns. The most striking thing to me about, and I know there's a lot of words and numbers on these pages, but there are a lot of people who work in South Burlington. There are a lot of people who live in South Burlington, but the number of people who live and work in South Burlington is actually very small. What's to me important about this is that it shows that Chittenden County especially, and sort of the fringes of the surrounding counties, are one economic ecosystem. It doesn't, people work in Essex and live here, or they live here and they work in Shelburne or whatever it is. It does, the municipal lines between the municipalities here are not walls. They're not sort of keeping everybody in or everybody out. Just a bit of policy information. We see the 2024 city plan as an update to the 2016 plan. There was a lot of good stuff in the 2016 plan, and there was a lot of good policy in the 2016 plan. Generally speaking, we see the 2024 plan as strengthening and updating and giving some teeth to the goals that were in the 2016 plan for the most part. Otherwise, there will be an increased emphasis on climate resilience and an increased emphasis on equity and inclusion. So those are the two big shifts. Along those lines, the City Council adopted a climate action plan last year. All of those targets will be incorporated into the city plan, and we will continue to strive to meet the statutory option for an enhanced energy plan, and also to be data driven. South Burlington is lucky to have the budget to conduct a lot of studies and a lot of hire consultants and do outside work of issues that we're facing. The intention is the comprehensive plan will incorporate those studies that the city has already done and intends to do into the future. A couple of additional economic knowns that I think are foundational and important to know here. And they're pretty obvious, but just to lay it all out, we're located at transportation intersections. We're on 189 or I-89 and 189, Route 2, Route 7, etc. We're at a major hub of ground transportation in the state. We're located in core Chittenden County. As I said before, this is sort of an economic ecosystem where South Burlington is not sitting by itself in ways that some municipalities are. We're also the home of Vermont's largest commercial airport, and we have a lot of existing large business parks, small business spaces, the University Mall, established medical offices, etc. So there's a lot that South Burlington already has and has going for it, both as for access purposes with all these transportation nodes, and also for sort of our surrounding, our existing infrastructure and our surrounding municipalities. So the core of our plan is the draft 2024 vision and goals. So this is an update to the 4 vision and goal statements that were in the 2016 plan. And so we've updated them to inclusive, fair, and just, human focused, climate resilient, and opportunity oriented. So these would be they don't have individual sections in the comprehensive plan. It is intended that these are the threads that run through the whole plan. So instead of climate sitting by itself in a section, it's being addressed all the way through. The same with human focused, inclusive, fair and just, etc. And the full vision and goal statements are available on our website. So just a few ground rules for the discussion. Pretty self-explanatory. Treat others with respect, value a diversity of views, direct comments to the facilitator, not to each other, and critique ideas rather than individuals. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Joe. This is Joe Sigali. He is our facilitator for this evening, and we'll start guiding you through our first exercise with Mentimeter.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Really happy to be here. Again, my name is Joe Sigali, and I'm actually a recent retiree from the state of Vermont at the Agency of Transportation. I retired in June, and glad to be back doing some professional work. I kind of missed being out here. And so these guys contacted me and just asked if I could help facilitate this meeting. And I've been in planning for 30, 35 years. So thanks for having me again. So we just need to get Mentimeter up in a second. But so what we're going to do is start with a small online poll just to get everybody kind of warmed up. There's a couple of sort of fun questions in there, and that will lead us into our discussion tonight. And what we're going to do is focus on the 4 goals that Kelsey showed you guys earlier, and some of you guys have already seen and maybe read through that. And we're going to talk about how the economy fits into those goals and what some of your thoughts are. And I'll help sort of guide the discussion as we move along. So
just leaving this up for people to get the code. But I can,
okay, yeah. So here's here are the instructions. So go to your phone or on your computer at home and type in menti.com. So that's MENTI.com. And then enter the code. That's the wrong code. That's from last week. Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
The correct code is,
Never mind this code.
the correct code is 5400. So 5400-1260. This is it right here.
So do we Google it?
Yeah, go to Google or Safari, whatever browser that you use. You bring your phone.
No, I don't know. I haven't looked at my phone.
Okay.
I was actually hoping to hear from.
Oh, you got a new one.
As opposed to, I know, I was hoping to get to that because we have a lot of people here tonight.
Yeah, you will.
And they know what they want to talk about.
Should I run and get my phone? I left it in the car.
No. This is just a kind of quick warm up here. Okay, so again, it's menti.com, ENTI.com, and the code is 5400-1260. Are folks there?
Yep.
So it's going to first just ask you what your name is, and you feel free to skip that. You don't have to enter that. And then the first question tonight is, there are approximately 20,000 jobs in South Burlington. What percentage of these workers also live in South Burlington?
It's actually less than 13.
Not enough.
Go ahead and answer the poll. Yeah, those are all good answers. This sort of is testing, how well you're listening.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we'll move along, and I think you might put that in the opportunity column eventually. This is just a general question about what activities do you do in South Burlington, and you can enter. You can choose any or all of them.
Thanks, Mom.
I think we have about 20 people total, maybe a little bit less than that because some of those people are us. So it's interesting that, I think we see that less people work than that one year. That's kind of consistent.
Revenue 60. This isn't representative.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of warm up. Okay, we'll just keep moving on. What one word best describes your mood at this moment? You can actually put in 3 different words. Just trying to take the temperature of the room. Tom, what would you answer if you could enter? Impatient.
I'm on the committee. I'm here to collect information, not to put it out.
Tired.
That was me.
Oh. Happy, that's good. Tired, happy, or about even, good. A little bit disappointed. Hopefully that'll get better as we move along through the evening. Curious, tired, happy. Nobody's hungry. Somebody was hungry.
Oh, someone is hungry.
Oh, so, okay,
You're in the room, there's food outside.
Oh, I see my word up there. Okay.
there you go.
That's how it works.
Nice work, Mike.
All right, we'll move along because I think people really want to get talking. This is a question that Paul Connor asked me to include in here. It's sort of the same thing, kind of a word cloud. So what does tonight's theme, the economy, mean to you in the context of South Burlington?
Never mind.
So what does the economy mean to South Burlington is another way to say that or ask that question.
You're supposed to enter it.
Yeah, you hit, just enter your words and then there's a submit button on the bottom. You have to kind of slide up. You may not be able to see it. Opportunity. And so the more people that put in a word, the bigger the word is what this is telling us. Strong downtown, growth, sustainable,
That's your goal.
future, prosperity, great importance, a paycheck.
Who said that? Was that, never mind, joke.
Who said what?
Somebody who works for the city, maybe. Just a joke.
Well, the economy needs a paycheck, whether you work for the city or not, really.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay.
Humor.
Yes, thank you. Great. All right, so just again to remind you of the vision and the goals, and I have one more question after this that will kind of lead to the discussion. So again, it's the 4 goals are inclusive, fair, and just. So that's creating opportunities for all residents and visitors. Human focused, invest in a high quality human scale built environment, climate resilient, emphasize sustainability for long-term viability of a clean and green city, and then opportunity oriented is be a supportive and engaged member of the regional and statewide community. So just reminding you what those goals are. And then this last question is sort of rank these when you think about the economy, or another way to think about it is what do you want to talk about first tonight? Because we're going to start with each of these goals and which of these are most relevant. And so you can go in and enter, you'll be able to pick one from the screen and they'll sort of, they'll cancel out as you move down. Looks like 5 so far, 5, 6, 7, all right. 8, 9, and 9 people. Okay, so. Okay, that's great. So, opportunity oriented is on the top, and that is the one that's strongest when it comes to the economy. And you'll see there's specific things about the economy under there. Human focus, that also makes a lot of sense. Then inclusive, fair, and just. These are all good. But so what we're going to do now is we're going to start with the goal opportunity oriented. And I'm going to kind of get out of Mentimeter now. Thank you for agreeing to go along with this. My questions here are starting on when you think about opportunity oriented and you think about the economy, what do you think the city is doing well in regards to this goal? And where do you think there's room for improvement relative to this goal? And thinking about, over the next 10 years, it's like, what's the direction that South Burlington should be going in?
And if anyone online wishes to speak, you can use the little raise hand button, or you can physically raise your hand if you have your camera on.
Yes.
Well, we have world-class businesses. I mean, some are represented here tonight, Dynapower, Beta.
Yep.
OnLogic. We have a lot of great small businesses. And so we've done that well. But there's not enough housing for those businesses. There's not enough employees for those businesses. And our policy statement here talks about us viewing ourselves regionally, and yet our policies seem to be very self-centered around South Burlington. So I would encourage the people who make these decisions to look a lot more broadly at what's being impacted, because I've heard that 1 in 5 Vermonters are now over 65, soon to be 1 over 4 Vermonters are to be over 65. We have great things going on in the legislature trying to put programs in for things like family leave, childcare, and the like. And it's not sustainable. There's not enough money to support that without more people and more employees coming into the state. And to do that, we need a lot more housing. And if South Burlington only has 9% developable land, we might as well not even have a discussion on economic development in South Burlington, because everyone's getting squeezed out.
When you talk about taking a regional approach, to housing, what is it looking for more housing outside of South Burlington?
No, I think every town in Chittenden County, and I think a lot of towns are doing their part. I think every town needs to increase their housing stock at all levels, not just apartments on Market Street. We need, people want houses, people want worker housing, and there's just not enough of it. I was managing partner at Gallagher Flynn. I retired a year ago. We had 80 people in South Burlington. Probably 10% lived in South Burlington. We paid good salaries. A lot of people were living in Franklin County, in Waterbury, to get a house with a yard, because it's unaffordable to live in South Burlington. So I think it's a huge problem. I think the state finally recognizes it. And I think our policies need to change dramatically, or anything won't be sustainable, whether it's climate change or any of these programs that the state wants to implement.
Great, thanks. Yes.
I'm here to learn. So what is stopping us from building housing? I know, some of it is the Development Review Board and so on, and deciding what zones, beta technologies, it was hard to get them in. We had a hard time with them coming in. So I'm just curious, do you, as the director, because we're supposed to not hit each other.
Sure.
So I'm directing it toward, what's stopping the growth?
I think we're here to, I'm on the committee, and I appreciate your questions. I don't know your name.
Cindy Freeman.
Okay.
Cindy Freeman.
Yeah, thanks. I think, that Kelsey did a good intro, but the goal would be to get your feedback about what you think we need more of, or how it should be done.
Okay.
I think, am I missing something here?
No, I am happy to answer just sort of quick factual questions.
Yeah, except, that's a broad question, and if you went around the room, you get a lot of answers.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I will just say that there, as Thomas said, there are a lot of factors. There's a lot of, I am certainly not an expert at construction financing, but I know there's some struggles in the cost of building housing at this point. There are different issues with availability of land or redevelopment sites. There's a lot of different things that are at play in South Burlington and everywhere in the state of Vermont.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But South Burlington, yes. Did I see someone's hand go up? Sorry. I gotta try to keep track of virtual and in person. But South Burlington does have some things going for it when it comes to housing or when it comes to the economy. Do folks want to identify any of those? Because those are, opportunities that, maybe could be leveraged in some ways.
Kelsey, do you have, or, would it be helpful to provide the numbers on how many units or homes have been built, say, over the last 5 years, and what's in the pipeline and kind of relative to other communities, that might help to level set.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of those numbers right in front of me, but the average yearly housing number of housing units is about 150. It's been steadily increasing since the 80s. It was, more in the 120 range. Now it's more in the 150, 160 range. We have significant numbers of multifamily units that are being put in here in Market Street that have been either completed, under construction, have recently been approved, or that we know are coming down the line. I don't know the exact numbers of that, but it's in the hundreds of units. It may be close to 1,000 total units.
Isn't Williston capping at like 500 units a year?
Williston has different issues because of their water system.
But yet they're doing 3 times more than South Burlington is.
Yeah, so maybe the suggestion here is to let's look at what some of the other communities are doing. Are there some advantages that South Burlington could take advantage of? And we're not going to solve it tonight, but obviously housing is a big issue, and it's an economic issue, it's an equity issue, it's a quality of life issue. It's all of those things. But so okay, we know that's an issue. But yes, sir, go ahead.
So Adam Vincent from Dynapower, I'm the GM CEO. So I echo the housing challenge, right? I mean, we pay our team extremely well. They do a phenomenal job. And there's a very small percentage of our team that actually lives in South Burlington. So we would look at this regionally. How does all of the groups working together figure out ways to economically develop land that's responsible, but also, I mean, in the middle of winter, like today, it's hard to drive from Franklin County down to our facility. So, and it's also very expensive, right? So that's a big economic challenge for us. I think also for a lot of the other businesses locally, and we have 250 employees, about 150 of them reporting every day to South Burlington and work there. So the housing is an issue. The transportation is an issue associated with that. And then, one other question I'd have maybe for you, Kelsey, is the percentage of undeveloped business park land. I know we're talking about the housing, which I do believe to be a primary engine for optimized costs, so to speak, for employees to make a living and still travel to work effectively. What about the business park percentage of undeveloped spaces?
I don't know about acreage. Michael actually may be able to answer how many lots are open in Tech Park. I believe it's 2 or 3. And I'm not sure in Meadowlands, but it's not there might be 2 or 3 in Meadowlands area as well. But there's not a lot, but there definitely are still a few unused spaces. Michael, do you want to jump in?
Go ahead, Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, we've looked at this recently. The percentage of acreage available in the business parts as compared to the percentage of acreage that's available, say, in the southeast quadrant, is a fraction of the overall acreage. I would like to posit one point with regard to the previous conversation. Most of the factors that are affecting the ability to build housing are market driven. That's the cost of capital, right? Interest rates, cost of labor, cost of materials. Those things are largely outside of the control of the city and the policy that we're putting forward. What is within the city's control is the regulation. It's the red tape that prevents projects from getting from conception to completion. We are not going to be able to influence the cost of capital, which largely is one of the main reasons why projects are not going to get built in the next couple of years. And similarly with labor and materials, where in the state of Vermont we have a aging and shrinking trade population. Carpenters, masons, these people are getting toward the end of their career, and there's not a lot of young people that are coming up and filling these positions. So the cost of labor to build these projects is going up. It's increased quite rapidly, and we at the city are not going to be able to do anything to impact that in the short term, but we can create policy and shape our regulations to allow projects to get from conception to completion quicker and easier. And I think that's what our focus should be around, as opposed to the market-driven factors, which are largely outside the control of this committee and of the city of South Burlington.
Is red tape? Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well,
piggybacking a little bit, Mike Simino, citizen South Burlington. There was mentioning of population, our aging population. At some levels, our population level has been flat. However, if you are going to meet the needs of people of the commerce and industry that are in the area, it seems inevitable that some population increase needs to occur in order to satisfy that. You can have a conversation about, well, we don't want any more people, or we don't want the population to increase. Might be a separate conversation, okay? But it seems that if you want to answer questions about whether you are going to find new employees to provide services and work in our businesses, and also people that gravitate into a developed area with services and what have you, there's going to be a population increase. So how do you accommodate that? Where do you put the people? If you admit that there's going to be an increase in population, there was a mentioning of about, well, what, 1.2%?
1.5.
1.5%?
Yep.
Okay. So if you do the math, even that adds up to, you know, pretty significant number coming in every year. And it's not the same every community, you know, but you've got people that are going to come in. And so there's an inevitability of population increase. You need to house people. So then you need to develop policies that are going to effectively allow you to provide the housing, but at the same time, use your resources, your land resources effectively. And I think that everybody would like to find that sweet spot where you can meet population growth needs, but at the same time, ideally be carbon neutral, you know, when you're doing it. Big challenge, a lot of effort being made towards doing it. Not easy, but that would be the goal.
I would also say just as another fact that I didn't include, but maybe should have in this conversation, that yes, our assumption is 1.5% population growth, but it's not even across age groups. There's actually the school system did a demographic study showing that there's a likely out migration of like 18 to 30-year-olds or something in that age group, but a higher increase of 30 to 45-year-olds. So families with children would be growing in South Burlington when we have out migration of different other groups.
Well, that assumes that if you're in that age group,
well, it's a prediction of both
having families and children, and I'd be curious to see what we're not going to do it here.
I think the demographer probably handles that.
Yeah, and because they predicted both groups increases in the under 18 age group and in the sort of 30 somethings age group. So those are sort of paired together in a certain way. That was a focus for the school system. So that's what they were looking at. But my point being is that the population growth for people of workforce age is likely higher than 1.5%.
Are there statistics on what type of housing that group wants?
Not that I have.
Even though the aging population is what we've seen rise the most?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, even though we have a trend with aging, you're suggesting the demographics will grow differently.
Well, I think especially if you want more workers to live in South Burlington.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, that's where it changes the dynamic. What about just we had a conversation with John earlier last week, I think, just kind of prepping for this. And, the idea of, what's the mix of business types in South Burlington? There's a lot of large businesses. Businesses come here to grow, to scale. Is the thing, I think, is the way that you put it. Is there need for other kinds of businesses, for startup businesses, for smaller businesses? Is there the right balance of that in South Burlington? Any thoughts about that?
I think some of that's organic. I think there's a good mix of businesses, and big businesses draw smaller businesses as suppliers and for services. and the like. So I don't know if there's any real sweet spot on mix. But we have a lot of, seems like we have a good variety of really good businesses.
You say it's organic. Is there something that the city's doing intentionally one way or the other? I mean,
I don't think the city's doing much to
you just had the
provide
advantage.
opportunity for business.
You had the
I
location
think
and
South Burlington is an attraction for the schools. And I mean, the school system is an attraction for people and businesses to come here and attract employees, I think. But I don't think the city has gone out of its way to encourage business growth here, in my view, anyway.
thank you. So there, sorry, there,
Srini.
It's
Tim.
Srini, yeah.
He's on the.
Can you hear me?
Can I make a suggestion on the 2 points that was raised by Mike Keller, which is the upper bound of land available for development, and then somebody talked about population growth. So if you think about the 8 or 9% land available, that's 20% of what has already been developed today, which is about 41% of total land. That 20% is going to take a certain number of years to develop because of all the factors that Michael described earlier about financing, all kinds of other issues in this environment. So to me, that 8% provides an upper bound of what you can realistically develop in the next 5 or 10 years. That needs to be matched with whether the 1.5% population growth can support or outgrow that development that the land can support. So I think Mike made the comment that South Burlington no way can sustain this type of growth. So if you think that that type of growth is not sustainable because of the upper bound of the land and the population is growing too fast, then whatever solutions we are providing today for housing is not going to work. It's not sustainable. So
we can undo some of the policies that we've done.
Yeah.
Right.
So either you make a conscious choice to change something, the rules of the game, or say that the city doesn't have the potential for economic development, and much of the burden of the cost of running the city, of maintenance, capital reinvestment, all that stuff will fall on the existing population. So the city has to figure out what type of growth, revenue, tax growth you need to sustain the overall development. So I have, I have raised this in other forums before. I think a high-level planning exercise like that, where you do a top-down forecast and a bottoms-up forecast and figure out what the city needs and what the city needs to sustain, will be a useful exercise for the city and the city council to say, this is what is realistic. So I would just like to make a suggestion that looks at that type of thinking here.
Tom, did you have, go ahead.
I'm just going to say,
yeah,
our committee needs consultants that can do the work.
You need this, you need the support. I'm sorry, I can't, Mike, you mentioned the policies need to change. Well, the obvious question is what policies?
Oh, well, the policy is restricting so much more land for no development.
Okay.
If we need more housing and we need money, we need people, it's a simple equation. You need land to build. That's why I asked the question, what if we have these 30 to 45 or 50-year-olds, more of them moving into the city, what type of housing do they want? I suspect it's not an apartment on Market Street. I suspect it's a single family home or a duplex, right, with a little bit of a backyard.
That was my next, just quick response.
I don't know.
My next question is what
wrong, but if you have a family, I think you want a house and a yard.
It's also about using the land you have maybe more efficiently, whether it's more density, and doing it in a way that can still sort of provide
you need
quality
more.
of life.
I think it's pretty obvious we need more land, because 9% is not going to do the trick.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name's Mike too.
Mike, okay, that makes it easy.
So you may have 9% that's available, it's open for development, but we should be looking at the existing built environment as well to see what capacity we have in the built environment. Now, if we're going to try to make more effective use in the built environment, we probably need to consider the idea of increasing density in the built environment in order to accommodate that growth. And there may be a lot of people that would be prepared to move into an environment that would reflect, instead of an R1 or an R2 or an R4, that would go 2, 4, and 8.
Right.
And people may be willing to move into that, but the folks who already occupy that environment, there's likely to be a resistance to that. So I don't know what mechanism our governance can employ to try to get folks on board. But I will say, if you're looking at the climate change agenda, we're recognizing no pain, no gain. You're going to have to make sacrifices. There's going to be a lot of sacrifices made in order to get where we want to go. In order to get where we want to go with the housing agenda, there are going to need to be sacrifices made, whether it's people allowing increased density into the environments that they're in, or the use of some land that is open but suitable for development that folks are resistant to using. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I want to just introduce the next goal here. I mean, this can be kind of fluid, but just to get you thinking some more. And it's the second on the list was human focus. So investing in a high quality, human scale, built environment.
Tim, did you want to speak?
Can I just say one thing is that I really would want to see something put into this discussion about enhancing our retail footprint in South Burlington, because I would like to wrest away some of the local options tax from Colchester and Williston if we can do that. We have a fair amount of unused retail space at the University Mall, and there is a huge opportunity there to reel in shoppers. I think people look, and now that we're out of the pandemic, they're looking for a shopping experience. They want to go somewhere, they want to walk around, and I think we need to look closely at that to figure out how the city can assist in that endeavor. We don't want Williston and Colchester, predominating in local sales options taxes. It doesn't have to be that way. We have room for that. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thanks. Did I miss anybody else online?
Tim, I think that's a great point. And there's some interesting things I think the city can do to help in the redevelopment of that property, which is pretty interesting. And I know the form-based code was a big part of the city's initiative and interim zoning, but I think in thinking about the layout of that property, having buildings right up on the street maybe something that we could relax a little bit to allow for development to occur at that property sooner rather than later. And I don't know if that's something that could be possibly achieved through, being flexible in the regulations to allow that to advance. And that's just based on some conversations that I've had with the new owners of the property. I think the form-based code restrictions on that property are going to prohibit development in the short term.
Okay, thanks. That's a pretty good segue, I think, into human focus, because form-based codes is really trying to achieve something that is really more people focused than, say, just car focused. And but it's interesting to think about that in the context of the economy. I mean, how does being human focused fit into building a vibrant economy in South Burlington? And I think maybe somewhat related to that, small businesses might be part of it, but I think the city center is a good example of just how South Burlington is going in that direction. And it seems like there's lots of opportunities right here in this space that's surrounding us now. So thinking about the human focused goal and, what are the opportunities in South Burlington? What are some of the constraints? It's interesting for you to think about that as a little bit of a constraint, because it's maybe you achieve human focus somewhat through regulation. And maybe that's a downside. But are there also any plus sides? Yes, Mike.
I don't know if it's a plus side, but I think in response to Tim on the retail, I think is currently people want to, when they go shop, they want parking, right? So U-Mall has parking, but they don't really have as many stores. They have Target and Kohl's that attract a lot of people, but the attraction isn't there for a mall anymore. So you look at Williston, and they've drawn L&L Bean, a New Healthy Living, and there's ample parking. So you can park right next to the store, you can go shopping, you can walk down to the next store, you can walk across the street. It's much more convenient. You come down to city center, there's barely any parking down here. So to draw a big crowd for a retailer, why bother? You can't draw a crowd if there's no parking right now. So it's just practicality.
Well,
There's no retail on Market Street right now. What are you worried about Market Street? The U-Mall is full of lots of parking. So what's that deal?
People don't want to walk when it's 40 below, Tim, from U-Mall down to city center.
Why are you going to walk to City Center from the U-Mall? There's nothing to buy in City Center.
We can sort of, we don't need to have an argument about that. You know, your point is parking is important.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe I'm the middle child, but I think you can have good parking and also have a human focused environment for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
And sort of
there are some conflicting interests. For example, at the U-Mall, the big box stores that are in the back of the mall, which have been the anchors there and drive most of the revenue for the ownership of that property, they have restrictions in their lease agreement that require visibility for those stores. And so if you build strip directly on the front of the road that prevents people from seeing those shops in the back, that's violation of the lease agreement with those stores. That includes Hannaford's, JCPenney, Kohl's, and I think that's it back there. So, you know, there's some prohibitions that would prevent them from immediately redeveloping the property and moving everything onto the street and conforming with form-based code. There's very specific rules in the new form-based code districts that prevent sensible redevelopment of the property at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so that's a, you know, tension, conflict, whatever you want to call it, that's got to be worked out. We're not going to be able to sort of solve that tonight. So is there some middle ground that both of those goals can be achieved?
I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
What is,
Don't apologize.
is form-based codes, so it's moving the retail, moving things, so people, if they're on their bikes, walking, they can just go to the shops? Is that the goal, or what's the goal of the form-based?
So, yeah, so a form-based code is a type of, a way to write a regulation where you're regulating what a building looks like and how it's situated, and you're regulating the building and not regulating necessarily the uses that go into it. So traditional zoning would say, oh, you're allowed to put a restaurant or a store or a dentist's office here, just hypothetically, and you're allowed to put houses over here, where form-based code is talking about what the buildings look like. And not necessarily what they're used for. So that's the form-based part of it.
Okay.
When I think they're all talking.
Many floors, or does that have?
There's other restrictions in our form-based code, but that's generally what a form-based code is. In our, Tom,
Allows
I'm
for
not,
more
Tom,
flexibility for change.
excuse me, I'm not finished speaking, Tom.
Sorry.
I'm finished speaking, thank you. What they're speaking about is our form-based code in particular. Has requirements for buildings being on the street so that they're more pedestrian and bike friendly, instead of, like, hypothetically, when you have a large parking lot and then a store at the back, it's a lot harder to walk across or whatever. So that's
bus transportation.
Or bus transportation, exactly. So that's a feature of our particular form-based code, not form-based codes as a general practice.
Okay, and how would that work for the developer that purchased the mall building? How would he then put buildings near Dorset Street, or, so that's the issue, is that.
That's the question.
That's the big question.
So
in order to keep those large retailers happy, they're going to have to build a new JCPenney and Kohl's right on the road.
Okay.
And that would be a very expensive proposition, and it's probably not feasible.
So why is that a restriction for an existing building? I mean, I can see like building new ones but why do a blanket restriction on buildings that are already existing?
It doesn't affect the building as it exists today. We're not saying that the form-based code does not say that the U-Mall has to like be knocked down and moved.
Okay.
That's not what it's saying. It's saying that any new development, any new buildings would have to comply.
I see.
Actually, any alteration to the existing permitting on the site would then force a compliance with form-based code, is my understanding. Is that correct?
It doesn't, it would force the alteration to comply, not the existing buildings.
But if there was going to be a major redevelopment
Yeah.
of the property, it would
Yeah.
come under those regs.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike.
The compliancy issue is, believe me, is a tricky one. But it's got to be addressed, because if you want transition to occur, you can't have so great a price to pay that nothing is going to happen. And people with existing buildings and existing investments need to have flexibility. Otherwise, they're not going to change. You know, want to put a new use in a building, and if you've got to bring your building into compliance, probably not going to happen. Not what I really wanted to talk about, but it was right there. So may I?
Yes, please. Go.
Okay. So I'm looking at human focused right now, and focus on safe, resilient, efficient transportation system that prioritizes pedestrian, bicycle, and transit options ahead of driving. I think for this coming comprehensive plan, and perhaps a few others, that driving's got to at least have an equal position in your, it's there, okay? People are going to be driving. They may be driving EVs, they may be driving hydrogen. They're going to be driving. So when it comes to your transportation system, I think this is a bit of a flawed statement, because driving is going to be a big part of our future. Nobody's talking about people not driving. And that transportation system that we're talking about, safe, resilient, efficient, there's, maybe it's implied, but I don't see reference here to our industrial and commercial activity. I don't see a reference to the fact that we have people moving through our community, the vast majority of people driving into our community in order to work and then leaving on a road system on their way home. So our transportation system, we need to be honest with ourselves regarding the kind of demands that are going to be placed on that system, and the most carbon effective way to be moving all of those vehicles in and out of our community, back and forth from their homes, to and from their businesses. Okay, I don't think we're doing that when we're ignoring the commercial side and we're trying to just say all these other types of transportations are going to be prioritized over driving. I think that's really that's not right. The other thing here in human focused, prioritize new development and redevelopment in built areas served by transit and public infrastructure. Okay, so the built area is served by public transport infrastructure. Says it right here, right? So we have built area. We've got areas that are served by infrastructure that somehow or other we are attempting to encumber or remove from the playing field when it comes to our consideration of their future development and use. That doesn't preclude being efficient. That doesn't preclude conservation, not permanent conservation, but conserve. It's a concept, you know, use things as wisely as you can. So,
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Go ahead.
You said something that's, you said that, it sounded like what you said is we have existing built up areas that we're not going to be able to use.
I would hope not. No, that's not what I'm
That's
saying.
what I thought I heard you say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Within reason. But again, if we have an infrastructure that is present, and it says to prioritize new development and redevelopment in built areas served by transit and public infrastructure, it seems to me that if we've got infrastructure serving parts of our community, that those parts of our community should be eligible and not encumbered or prohibited from development.
Okay, got it.
Responsible development.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Did other folks have any, folks that haven't spoken yet? Yes, please.
Yeah, I'd like to connect with that. And I'm Janet Bellavance, and thinking about human focus, and you were mentioning, Mike, with the redevelopment, and then you had asked initially a question of where you think we're doing well in South Burlington. And I do think that the recent approval of Tesla to come into the Hannaford area, or discussion about that, is a positive. It's redevelopment of a space that is empty and derelict. It's also a business that will supply a new technology. It's you know, I think that there's a lot of positives about that. So I would applaud the city for looking at that, making some changes to allow that to happen. And it's a transit area, and you know, I know on the affordable housing, we looked and see, could housing go in there as well? And it's not taking up the big footprint. That's a huge parcel of impermeable surface. So it will help us meet our climate energy goals. So I think economic development is done well when you meet multiple goals. And so any of those projects are the ones that are most appealing to me. And the ones
Great statement.
that we should be looking for to move forward.
It sort of, it raises a question for me, which is, what is the purpose of economic development?
And I'm just going to head on to that. And I know this probably isn't the right place, but things like natural capital and ecosystem services and things that we don't really talk about, I feel have a real place in the comprehensive plan. Where is a place where we can value open space for keeping our air clean and our water clean? When we have that dense housing and we have an open space, that's where you can go and take your dog or your kids and play. It allows you to have the density. If it's all just density, I feel, you know, you can feel claustrophobic, but to say, oh, you have this park nearby you, you have these fields nearby you, you have Wheeler House you can go to, those are amenities that make people want to come to South Burlington. You know, to go to the playground at that play area and gardens at Wheeler House. Those are appealing features that are intrinsically connected to our identity.
Thanks. Others that haven't spoken up yet?
Doug,
feel free. Doug, please go ahead.
I was sort of listening, and I unfortunately didn't get in until about 7:30, but listening to the last conversation about the U Mall and development there. And I was thinking that that would be something that we should really be focusing on. In the current comprehensive plan on page 47, it talks about working with hospitality leaders to evaluate the opportunities for a public-private partnership to increase convention or athletic event infrastructure that will improve our ability to attract right-sized conventions, athletic and cultural events to our community. At the U Mall, we've got the Sears building with the parking adjacent to it, and that would be an ideal place for higher ground to go. I live in the Queen City Park neighborhood, and we've been struggling for the last going on 4 years with Burton, with them trying to bring higher ground over here where access is on a 1-lane bridge or off of a 2-lane residential street. And the U Mall would be such a perfect location with student housing going in on Market Street and the new pedestrian bridge that we're working to bring in across the highway. It would be a perfect location for bringing in students, easy access onto the interstate and so on. So I think that that's really something that should be looked at. Thank you.
Has that been looked at, or is that in the
Well,
works? Is that?
That's not,
It
that's,
is in the works? Okay.
no.
It has been looked at. It has been looked at,
I'm sorry, what's been looked at?
the higher ground possibly being in the Sears building, the former Sears building. at
Oh, okay.
Morgan Hall. So it has been looked at, but what, do we know what the verdict was on that? Because it does seem like a perfect place when you have the east-west crossing bridge coming, and we're, you can bring in, all those college kids and bring in their funds, and
Well, I think you're talking about a decision by a private business and where they're deciding to look. So there's only so much, certainly through the permitting process, you can put up some resistance and try to, guide them in a different direction than maybe they're deciding to go. But it's ultimately they're.
I didn't know what it meant by it was looked into. I didn't know.
I guess I'm bringing up because in the current comprehensive plan, it talks about working with hospitality leaders and so on to try to bring these things into our community. And it just seems like such a no-brainer with the access to the university and the bulk of the people that go to those concerts and with that pedestrian bridge. So it just seems with the TIF funding for that bridge, it seems like that would bring revenue in to support that. And that's it. Transit, easy transit into downtown, tons of parking. And it seems like it should be continued to be explored.
Thank you. Any other thought? Yeah.
I just was hoping for more.
For more.
Well,
go ahead. Ask
we have people that haven't spoken up yet, both here.
Are there others that would like to speak up on the human focus or online or in the room here? Yes, Mike.
Okay. Yes, I bought here in South Burlington 6 years ago, coming up from the Washington, D.C. area, very much driven by the vision that you all had elucidated back then, which was this sort of vibrant downtown area, excellent school system. And I think, those are the strengths that I've heard. I've had other people I've got to know here who have moved here in recent times, driven also by that vision. But at the same time, I've come to conclude that there's this challenge, and we're hearing this challenge, whether it's the bringing properties or businesses up to the street or how to deal with the parking, that is not coming together. And so I'm just in the listening mode. I bought here and kept postponing coming here, thinking that this would come together, and we finally came together. But it really doesn't have that vibrant. And I find it, I'm trying to understand why. In the Washington area, Northern Virginia developed in the very way where you had this living of houses, apartments, single family homes, concentration of businesses, as we were just hearing, which around there was vibrance and parking lots, so you would take care of it. So it seems like, it's about coming up with the right mix. But I am listening to hear, this is the first time I've attended one of these things, I hear that they're seemingly, they're macro issues that obviously are affecting everywhere in the country, but also they're just challenges that model just cannot work here because you need more of the traditional shopping mall, car-based society, and that there's a limit to how much, let's say, street traffic you can create because of just the proximity of these, as we said, disaggregated villages and towns that make up the sort of Chittenden County. I'm just curious because if I look at the vision again, I have that videotape from that first attracted us, and we came up here and we specifically focused on South Burlington. It hasn't quite evolved that way, and I guess this is what this meeting in part is, how to get to that, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I think it is part of an ongoing evolution in South Burlington, and the plan's been in place for decades. And there's been lots of progress made, I think, in city center and in the city overall. So, in my view, as someone who's interacted and worked in South Burlington, I don't live here, but I've seen lots of progress over the years. And there is a center, and I parked on street. I can't remember parking on street in South Burlington, before there was city center, and it's close by and all of that. So I think things are going in the right direction. And
but I also, if I can just add, I thought the whole concept of the city center, I remember it was first floor retail space, maybe mixed in with some office buildings, the rest living. And as you had, still having the parks and having that balance where, you have proximity to work, proximity to school, proximity to restaurants. You don't have to be in the car. If you do come in the car from outside the area, you can park the car and take care of a variety of different interests, whether they're entertainment shows or whether it's food or even shopping. But if I go down to the Market Street area, I'm not too far from it all. And it's very much just sort of, and the upcoming buildings are all residential. So in many ways, the footprint will be sort of a residential area. Across Dorset will be this, mall, but the mall is about, crossing through all the parked cars to, get to some of these anchor stores. I thought there was supposed to be some sort of amalgamation of these two together. And I don't know if that's still the possibility or policy.
So, Mike, let me just jump in. It just happened that the natural evolution of the city center as developers came in is they developed some sites that didn't require first floor commercial first. But the buildings that have been approved very recently, that are under construction, that have been recently approved or are being applied for soon, those buildings all have some variety of first floor commercial space. My understanding is it's somewhere in the 20,000 square feet range per sort of permit application. So those are buildings that are being constructed now that will look a little bit different than the buildings that have been constructed in the last few years that maybe don't have that first floor commercial. The ones that are coming in now will have the first floor commercial, and that is really the first step for city centers to start evolving into the vision that you're talking about. Because it's one thing for the city to regulate a certain way. It's another thing for developers to come in and to make that a reality. So that's where we are in that process. Is some of those buildings with that first floor commercial are under construction or in the permitting process at some stage.
I would also jump in. The demand for housing here is huge. So that's what we've seen. And so we're a work in progress, I think, as Kelsey suggests. And, it's going to be some time. Or we hope that'll work out. That was the whole plan with Market Street, but we'll just have to see. The demand for housing is still huge. So we'll see what we end up with. Who builds what where.
And, stay involved and try to keep pushing it in that direction.
Yes, help us.
I do, so, this conversation continues on, but I do want to just bring up the next goal, which is an important one, which is inclusive, fair, and just. Thinking about the economy in South Burlington, and how do you move things in that direction? Again, it's the same question. Is it what's South Burlington doing well in that area of being inclusive and just and fair? And where's there room for improvement? How much of a role does the city take in trying to make that happen in the first place? Is South Burlington an inclusive community?
Gee, it's quiet.
Well, Kelsey, you indicated some demographic improvements in that process. Can you share anything more about what policies may have driven some of that?
I actually don't know if it's any intentional policy. It's just a demographic shift in Vermont as a whole. And when Vermont is changing a little bit, a lot of that is focused on Chittenden County. There are, as has been true for decades, the Burlington area is an attractive area for people moving in for other places. And we're at the point now, it's my understanding, we're at the point now where there are families who came in and moved in the 70s, 80s, 90s, who are now second or third generation of some families that moved in a few decades ago. So some of that demographic shift is because of the growth of our existing residents, and some is additional in-growth from other places. But I can't speak for everybody. Speaking to our city clerk downstairs, like, she sees people from different communities, different countries that she sees on a regular basis, and It's quite amazing, actually, the amount of diversity. So I think a little bit of it, and this is just my opinion, is some of what Burlington has been seeing for decades has now made it to South Burlington, that people are not necessarily now living just in Burlington. There are communities in South Burlington when maybe there weren't as vibrant of communities before.
One of the bullets under here, I mean, it's what we started out talking about, but, affordable housing is a big issue when you're talking about being an inclusive, already kind of identified that. Income was also, certain class that, oh, I'm sorry, someone.
People were on,
Oh,
they're talking without realizing it.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, I think affordable housing is a potential, area for improvement when it comes to being inclusive and talking about equity.
Can you also, when you say the word affordable, I think you also want to consider worker housing and middle class housing, because I think there's a big squeeze in South Burlington on that type of housing. It's either high or it's low. There's not a lot in the middle. And so I think continuing to use the term affordable housing, I think the words need to change in some fashion to be inclusive of the workforce and things like that,
right?
As opposed to just using the term affordable, because I think that's can be viewed in a different manner, I guess.
Right, and everybody has a different level of what's affordable, for sure. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, so much comes back to housing when we talk about it. So the new development in South Burlington, Spear Meadows, where they had a home unfortunately burned the other day. Access point financially to move into that neighborhood is 700 grand, give or take. That project took
18 years.
Yeah, so 18 years to come online. And the bulk
project was that?
Spear Meadows. It was originally intended to be 99 units. It came on at 49 units. If it would have come online when it was supposed to have, if it hadn't been appealed as often as it was, those homes would have probably come on the market at a considerably lower figure. They would have become that missing middle. They would have churned probably 2 or 3 times. But even as expensive as that housing is, and you are unlikely to build, quote, affordable housing in the Southeast Quadrant. But whatever housing you do build, and we do need, it's a supply and demand problem. We need more housing in all price ranges. If you bring that housing online, other people will sell their home to buy that. So nobody's trying to suggest that a home that's going to be built in, say, the Southeast Quadrant is going to be affordable. The conversation is really about housing affordability, not affordable housing. And we need affordability. And in order to get affordability, the best thing we can do is to create more product.
Beyond housing, are there opportunities for, jobs and, regardless of what, who you are and what your income status is in South Burlington, an inclusive place when it comes to thinking about jobs and opportunity?
I look at our website. We have 41 open positions right now that we can't fill.
I'm on the SPPA
If you know anybody that
board.
wants a job,
What are you looking for?
everything from professional staff, engineering, purchasing, supply chain to people.
Who is speaking? Can you turn the camera, please?
Sorry.
Adam Knudsen from Dynapower. So in South Burlington.
To get that is Adam from Dynapower.
Adam from Dynapower. So we are a power and energy solutions provider. In Vermont, we do a lot of manufacturing. So this is build the frequency converters for the Patriot missile system, as well as a whole bunch of power electronics that help the grid be more efficient. So very focused on the climate side as well. And so we are full scale manufacturing. So we will train. So, I think a part of it is, we have to try to understand, well, why do all of these companies in South Burlington have these open positions. One is because there's a lot of great things that we're doing, and collectively, not just Dynapower, but the whole group, we're doing something right as an overall business community, and we need more employees. We need more team members. And especially if we are willing to completely train, all you have to do is come in and be willing to work. That's got to be open to everybody, right? So trying to figure out ways that we can get that message out. We've even reviewed some unintended bias, right? We still use the radio ads to try to get, awareness and okay, well, good. We get a common demographic. Well, why don't we change where we advertise or alternate, things like that. So there's a lot, I think, of job opportunities within the South Burlington community. We're just one of those. And it is, we will literally hire based on no skill or, a fully skilled senior position in technology.
That's great.
And you're competing with OnLogic, and you're going to be competing with Beta pretty soon too, right?
Pretty soon. We've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I know, but between the labor participation rate, the aging population in Vermont, right, and a large percentage of young people that are not participating, it's a huge challenge for employers to find people to do work.
Yeah, I echo that completely. Yeah, from our side, the way I word it is we long ago gave up trying to find the most talented people that we can that either choose to live in Vermont or will move here. So we are a national search, right? We have more staff that live outside of Vermont than live inside. So, and part of the challenge is we also have to outsource significant manufacturing work to, some of it's still in Vermont, but a lot of it is regionally, nationally, and globally. So if we were, some of that will always happen, independent of if we could find a whole bunch of people. But so in general, I think there's Beta's one of them. I think we mentioned earlier, OnLogic's another. I met with them this morning. There's a lot of great businesses in South Burlington. There's a lot of great tech businesses in South Burlington, and ways that we can bring individuals in, get them even entry-level positions that can be trained. Of every demographic you could possibly imagine would be warmly welcomed in our business. I think that's a way that you can get people to fall in love with South Burlington.
What do you think the obstacles are?
To get people to
do, you're trying to fill spaces, and obviously it's a problem with that. It's, and you're trying to recruit out of state. And Vermont's a great place to live. We've all heard about it. I mean, look, so why is this one of the obstacles?
There's a few, maybe at the senior staff level, there's the usual piece about opportunities for spouses, right? And we've heard that for 25 years. There's not that many jobs in that bandwidth that if people are moving into Vermont, and you're not required to move to Vermont for a Dynapower unless you're building product. It's kind of hard to build a 100,000 pound piece of equipment in your living room. So you have to show up to the plant. But for all of our professional staff, you can live anywhere in the world. It'd be phenomenal if you happen to be in Burlington and to choose. So not to dominate the conversation, but there's a lot of job opportunities that, a matching program, matching jobs with applicants would be fantastic as part of that process. Now, we have a little bit of a burden that some of our, entry-level positions we're in heavy manufacturing, right? So, our average wage is somewhere north of $26 an hour in the production world. So, we're paying a solid wage, and it's still hard to find resources.
Why do you think that is?
Cost of living.
Is it cost of living? Is it?
I want to have the overall, I think, challenge of there's not that many humans that live in this area. There just isn't. And if our regional communities, including South Burlington, are growing and trying to keep businesses in that space, then we are competing with organizations outside of South Burlington. And that's life. That's part of it. So we try to have a phenomenal culture, great work, great development opportunities to promote from within where we can. But if we're trying to, I know we are certainly at Dynapower, drive a DEI program that is responsible, respectful, and enhances our work environment, not just in South Burlington, but across the country. We want you to come knock on our door, and then we'll do everything we possibly can to get you a career in our business.
So you are inclusive. You have to be inclusive because you need the help.
We choose to be inclusive, right, which is my personal opinion in our business culture to be exactly that way. And absolutely, it's the best part of how you might grow a fully talented team member. business.
Any
Okay.
other businesses and
Thanks,
that-
Adam. I
Yeah.
appreciate your comments.
Any other thoughts on this from folks maybe that have businesses or that are just workers here? And then is South Burlington an inclusive place? Is there room for improvement?
I think it's very inclusive. There's just not enough people. And I think cost of living is a part of it.
Right.
At our firm, which I retired from, used to be 10 years ago, a difference in scale with places like Boston was maybe a 20% difference. Now there's no difference. The cost of living is about the same. Apartments for kids are the same up here as they are in Boston.
Right.
And so it's an affordability issue.
The salaries aren't.
And the Vermont Futures Project says we need 10,000 people a year to even keep even with the jobs that are needed, and we're nowhere close to that. So it's a huge labor issue, and you just have to walk around South Burlington. Every business is either closed some days of the week because they can't find people, or Adam's running 40 people short, or outsourcing to other places. My own firm has opened up an office in India because we can't find people to come here. And so I think a lot of it is an affordability issue. And the regulations and all the stuff are surrounding it don't help it.
I will say part of what we try to do is if we can get you to come to Vermont and you can stay engaged for 2 years, likely you put down longer roots, right? You fall in love with the place. So if we can try to continue, whether it's with South Burlington support, state support, federal support, if we can recruit, people to come to, mostly that's not on the production level, that's on the staff level, but we can get you here for a couple of years. One, we'll guarantee you love your job in our business, but then you'll become part of the community. And that's a good thing, I think, across our Vermont demographics.
Great. We have just a few minutes left here. Could have said when we started, the meeting goes to 8:30. If we can continue the conversation if it's rolling along, but are there any other thoughts or comments about anything that we talked about tonight? Anything that you wanted to say but didn't get to say, didn't really kind of necessarily fit into the framework that we've laid out here around the goals?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. I'm a lay person, so pardon me if I don't sound as well versed as other folks, but I've lived in South Burlington for over 35 years. My husband was born and raised here. We live in the village at Dorset Park, and we live in a townhome. We've lived in the townhome for 28 years, and we've watched our neighborhood change as our son grew. We watched lots of kids riding buses, and then we went through a period where there really weren't a lot of kids, and we have a lot of kids again. And what we've seen over the last, I would say, decade or so is that we have a lot of young families, or even now they're not so young. They've got kids graduating from high school and going into college, and they live in townhomes. And so I understand South Burlington, we're looking at affordable housing, and we're lamenting the lack of space for single family homes, and whether, how do we make those affordable? I think I always wonder what it would be if we asked these families who have young children or children in school who choose to live in, say, a townhome. My neighbors say they do it so that they can spend time with their children on weekends. They don't want to be tied down to mowing lawns and taking care of maintenance of their homes. That's all to do with their lifestyles and quality of life. So and to the point where some of our neighbors are adding in their townhomes, in the 2,000 square foot townhome, they're adding on bathrooms, or they're dividing up bedrooms to make an extra bedroom. So and these are people who are double income professionals. We got next door, we've got somebody's in technology, and his wife is a professor at the university. They've raised 2 sons in their townhome. They've lived there for over 15 years, and they've, you know, added and changed the inside of their house. They probably could afford, you know, more than what the traditional actually definition of affordable is for housing. But there's no like, if we look at city center as more of an urban area and we're putting in apartments, we keep thinking affordable apartments, but there's a lot of folks like our neighbors who are people who can afford a little more, but apartments and condos in a, you know, have a 2-bedroom condo isn't enough for them. It's not adequate space. So I'm just wondering if anybody has thought about the fact that people live in urban areas like New York City and Boston who are raising families in apartments, in condos that are in city environments. And along with that, if that was something that we thought of, both young families like I just described and young professionals who don't have children but who love their dogs as children, we need to make sure that there's space and quality space and amenities near those high density housing areas that provide that quality of life, whether it's a park or whether it's cafes. I keep waiting for there to be some little cafe or something created somewhere near city center to be able to go and just have a cup of coffee with somebody. We're full of chain restaurants and chain fast food places. South Burlington really lacks some of that local flavor, I guess. And we're basically been historically a drive-through community, and trying to retrofit us is a big challenge in making us a community with like a city center. So anyway, I guess that's all I wanted to say. I just think we're jumping from this low density single family or townhomes like we're in to this high density apartments, but the mentality is a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, rather than thinking apartments, high density apartments can also mean families. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I took so long.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for your contribution.
I mean, I think I want to try to summarize that really quickly, which is kind of what I heard is like, it's important to provide the amenities if you're going to be doing high density, and to, you know, accommodate families that live in high density and make those areas nice places to live, is I think what I kind of maybe heard Betty say. Any final questions, comments, thoughts tonight? You know, there's a bunch more of these meetings coming up, and you know, I think I know what we're going to find is that there's just cross-cutting issues in all of these. I mean, obviously, you know, it'd be interesting to see if housing is the common thread to all 11 meetings. You know, it probably is going to come up pretty often. Any thoughts from you, Kelsey, as we wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I think
John and
that there are now 9 additional meetings. There's actually one tomorrow and one on Thursday. Tomorrow is the energy and climate meeting, and Thursday is the Northwest Neighborhoods, which is approximately sort of East Terrace, Chamberlain, Mayfair Park, generally speaking. So if you have any interest in that area, or you live in that area, we'd love to have you at that meeting as well. Otherwise, there are additional meetings next week. The full calendar is online on our city website. There's also a 5-minute online poll. If you picked up one of our, I don't think it's this, but there's some flyers outside. There's a couple of QR codes. The one on the front is for just to go directly to the website. The one on the back is for the poll, the link to the poll, which you can also find through the website. And there's also an online comment box. So if you have further written comment that you wanted to submit outside of attending additional meetings, you're also free and welcome to do that as well.
That's from the Economic Development Committee, which was, we're the audience here for you guys. Is I really appreciate your coming. I appreciate your willingness to come and provide ideas for us that we can try to synthesize and think through and then make as recommendations to the planning commission. They draft the municipal plan. So, but, you know, we try to give it our best shot to give them the best advice we can. And you help. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone online.
Thank you.